pajamas, and as you can see, it's not the perfect lighting for a live video, but at least you can see me. So, I've been asked by a few people to come on and talk about night waking in babies of around 5, 6, 7, 8 months plus. So not newborn babies, older babies. And the reason for this is that there's lots of confusion out there about what's the best thing to do if a baby is waking at night. And you know that they are waking out of habit, really, or how do you know if they're waking out of habit and they're not waking out of hunger? So that is the question. So let's have a think about it for a minute, how babies sleep. So when a baby is in the womb, inside you, and you are walking around and doing jobs and busy all day, your baby is basically rocked to sleep inside you. Especially if you have a toddler who you're running around after all day, or an older child. Then comes 7, 8 o'clock in the evening when you sit down, that you have your dinner and you might sit down on the sofa and think, I mean, your work's never done as someone who has a home and has children, or even if it's your first baby and you don't have children yet, you still are busy at night, getting work clothes ready, getting uniforms, ready, etc. So you may not get to just sit down and totally relax, but you might sit down for an hour or so after dinner. That would have been your baby's most awake time because your baby was no longer being rocked to sleep. So at that point, your baby's going to be awake. So then when that baby comes to the outside world, the most awake time is when your most on active time was. So of course, that would be evening, sort of when you first sat down, or at night time when you're trying to sleep in bed. So of course baby comes out with the night and day mixed up, because the reason for that is they've been rocked to sleep all day and then they were awake all night when you were no longer rocking them. So that's a little baby. Then they come out and they pretty much have the skill of sleeping. So the first 3 weeks of life, a baby pretty much is just like, you can do anything to them, all they want to do is sleep. So you're saying, I'm trying to follow a routine, but they're just sleeping and I don't know what to do, but that's okay. You just do the feed times on the routine and you can let them nap outside of sleep times. That's in the Save Our Sleep book. So this, for new people watching, is the Save Our Sleep book. It's in the Save Our Sleep book on around about page 119, depending on which copy you have. The book gets reprinted about once a year, so page numbers change. So it's around about page 119, there's tips. So that's a little newborn baby. And then the first few weeks, you can pretty much rock them to sleep, pat them to sleep, and they will sleep. Come 8 weeks, they start catnapping in the day, because that's when daytime sleep cycles start. I won't bore you with all of that just now, because we're not talking about that at this moment. But what I will say is that you might be somebody who has a baby, and you're following Save Our Sleep. So you're following my routines, you're following my expressing advice, which is milking your breasts at a set time every day. Now I say milking your breasts at a set time every day because I mean you are either expressing from your breasts or your baby is drinking from your breasts, which is basically taking the milk out, which is known as milking your breasts. So you're doing that at a set time, not chopping and changing the time, at a set time and following a routine. And your baby might be having 2 good sleeps during the day, maybe an 8, 9 week old baby, 2 good sleeps during the day, but is waking up at night. And your friends' babies are having catnaps during the day, really crappy sleeps during the day, but might be going down to bed at 7 o'clock at night, absolutely exhausted, and then basically sleeps all night through till 7 o'clock in the morning. You're following Save Our Sleep, but your baby is waking at night for a feed, one feed, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? But believe me, when your baby gets a bit older, especially when they're established in solids, your baby will sleep all night. And the baby who was sleeping all night will now be catnapping during the night, because nighttime sleep cycles start at about 6 months, depending on their weight. So then when nighttime sleep cycles start, their baby will wake at night, but they'll say, oh, it's okay, my baby's just teething, or my baby's going through this sleep, or my baby's going through that, or it's a sleep regression. Well, it's not true. Leaps, sleep regressions, what are they? They're just the new buzzword for my baby has a need that's not being met. So a first sleep regression would be at 4 months old. Babies between 16 and 18 weeks need iron in their diet. They need more iron than what they already have in their diet. So that's why we introduce rice cereal at this point. Yes, some people might say rice cereal isn't good and rice cereal is and rice cereal. However, it is good. It's what gives babies iron. Zoe and I did a podcast, and Zoe went and looked into it, and she came and she said she couldn't believe the amount of food you would have to eat to get the same amount of iron that's in infant rice cereal. And one of my children, as a result of having COVID, became iron deficient. And lots of people seem to be iron deficient, and some countries think it's connected to COVID, as in they weren't iron deficient in the past, and since we've had COVID, they are. Now, I don't tell my child this, was mixing infant rice cereal into smoothies for the morning because he couldn't handle having the drink. The iron supplement drink was making him vomit, and it got his iron levels straight back up again. So it is very good infant rice cereal. So at 16 to 18 weeks, they need iron in the diet. Now, the other thing that happens at 18 weeks is, regardless of whether you have started your baby on solids or not, they start reducing their milk intake. It's like they suddenly go, I don't need milk anymore, I'm going to reduce how much milk I take, and they get hungry. So if you were following my advice and gave your baby solids at 16 to 18 weeks, your baby would not go through that sleep regression that people call the 4-month sleep regression. And if your baby does go through that sleep regression, we need to look at, are they hungry? Are they cold? Why is that happening? So that's your first sleep regression. Then people say at 6 months is another sleep regression. No, that's because they might not have protein in their diet. If you start solids at 16 to 18 weeks, by 6 months, they can be eating enough protein to get them through the night. It's not called a leap. It's not called a sleep regression. It's called needing protein. So, and it's not called teething, etc. So what do you do if your baby reaches 6 months and is still waking at night? Well, I'd be asking you a few things. So if you're not a Save Our Sleep family and you've not been following Save Our Sleep, please don't look at doing sleep training. It's not the answer. You can't turn around and say a 6-month-old baby's waking during the night, or an 8-month-old or a 9-month-old's waking during the night, and it's time to do sleep training and let's do cry it out or control crying. It's not the answer. Control crying is mean because you don't look at the baby's needs, and so is cry it out for that matter, both of them. So I'm saying at 6 months they might need protein in the diet. Well, if they don't have protein in the diet because you are just about to start solids or you're doing baby-led weaning, it's cruel to do cry it out or control crying, and eventually they'll stop crying and they'll probably flip to their tummy and they'll sleep all night. But that's not right. That's because they've learned that you're not going to come. You're not going to come to their cries. It's not something I recommend. It's not something I would do. Okay? At any age. The other thing that it could be at 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, is you might have moved to stage 2 infant formula. Stage 2 infant formula causes poor sleep, catnapping, night waking, etc. Talking of infant formula, our infant formula comes back into stock tomorrow. We only do stage 1 and we still have our buy 5, get the 6 free, and we're still 30% cheaper than the supermarkets. So make sure that you check that out. So anyhow, back to this night waking. So don't suddenly decide that you're just going to do cry out or control crying, because you need to make sure all your child's needs are met, which includes their diet, your diet. What are they eating? What are they drinking? What are you eating? Things like probiotics can cause night waking. Those type of things you need to look at. You also need to look at their routine, especially sort of your 11, 12-month-old and over 12 months. If they're having a block of sleep that is greater than 2.5 hours during the day, that causes night waking at night. So if you have a 1-year-old and you're putting them to bed and they're sleeping 2.5 hours, and then in the morning, like sort of 11 o'clock, and then you might be able to get a little nap in the car or the pusher in the afternoon of 30 minutes. That's 3 hours in total, that's fine. But you don't want to do 3 hours from, let's say, 11 through till 2 o'clock. Is that 11, 12, 1, 2? Yeah, that's too much sleep in one hit, so you don't want to do that, okay? So you would look at that. You would, why I'm sort of saying 5, 6 months is because even if you're following Save Our Sleep, and you're following Save Our Sleep with a little baby, and, if you have really good milk supply, nice and thick and creamy milk, and everything's on your side and going really well, or your baby is formula fed. Now, when they're formula fed or expressed breast milk in a bottle, but you need to express that breast milk at the same time every day, you can't chop and change what time, or the milk changes quality. If you're feeding the baby from a bottle or breast and they're getting all they need, they'll probably start sleeping through the night from 6 or 7 weeks. But not all mammals, humans, have enough milk to feed their young. So some babies, you feed them on a routine during the day, and then at night time they will wake for night feeds. That is okay. At Save Our Sleep, we do demand feeding overnight. And it is okay if they wake for night feeds during the night, if they need it. However, when your baby gets to 6 months, if you're following Save Our Sleep, you have now introduced solids at 16 weeks. And let's say you didn't, just to say you weren't following Save Our Sleep, so you started solids at 6 months, then by 8 months, your baby is eating enough food. But let's say you're true Save Our Sleep and you started solids at 18 weeks and your baby is now nearly 6 months, or let's say 6 months and 2 weeks, and you've given them protein and they're waking during the night still. It could be habit, or it could be that another need's not met. Now, they're not hungry because you're feeding them. In the morning, you're feeding them rice cereal, or after, as if they're older, they might be having oats, mixed with fruit, mixed with express breast milk or formula stage 1. Then after that, just fruit. Then lunchtime, you're giving them their like chicken casserole or their salmon casserole, pureed, mixed with some rice cereal and milk. And then after that, you're giving them rice cereal, infant formula or express breast milk mixed with fruit as a second course. So they're not hungry, and you're feeding them till they are full. So they are not hungry, okay? So why are they waking at night? Well, are they a second or third child? Because we all have this terrible habit with second and third children of being so scared that they're going to wake our first child up that we run to them the second they go "Wah" at night. They make a simple noise "Wah" at night and we run to them. With your first, you might be like, oh, I wonder if they're going to wake up. Oh, I might leave them for a minute. But with your second, you run straight to them because you don't want them waking your first up. So my question would be, are you responding too fast at night? Why don't you leave your baby, set a timer and say, I'm not going to respond for at least 6 minutes, and see if they get themselves quiet again. It's 6 minutes continuous of wah, 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 wah before you run to your baby of any age. This can be a little baby as well, like not a baby under 3 weeks, but a little baby, anything over 3 weeks. You could say, I'm going to set a timer for maybe 3 weeks to 8 weeks, a 4-minute timer. 8 weeks plus a 6-minute timer. And only run to them if it's wah, 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 which is a hungry cry. If they're just going wah, wah, something's woken them and they're making a bit of a noise and it's wah, 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 and stop, start, longer, shorter, don't run to them. And if they take a gap, start your timing again. So if they've cried for like that noise of sort of protest for like 2 minutes and then they stop, start the stopwatch again. Most of us have iPhones or Samsung phones like iPhones. Start the timer again. You can get a stopwatch, start the timer, end the timer, start the timer. You'll be surprised. They might settle themselves before they actually cry for any length of time that you decide is the time that you're going to respond. Let's say you've done all of this and your baby is 6 months old. You've been following Save Our Sleep. It's your second child. You're desperate to get a good night's sleep and you realise that you've caused a habit at night. Then I would be saying bedding, bedding, bedding before we do any form of trying to get them to resettle at night without using cry out or control crying. Now, I was saying about control crying teasing because with control crying, you put them in bed and you say, I'm going to leave them for 6 minutes and then I'm going to go in. And then you go into them. So you put them in bed and say, or they wake up in the middle of the night and you're doing control crying and you go in and you say, Mummy's here, I love you very much, or Daddy's here, I love you very much, but you need to put yourself back to sleep and you walk out. You set a timer for 6 minutes. This is not what you're supposed to do. This is what I'm saying I don't like. You set a timer for 6 minutes, you go back in. Mummy loves you very much, or Daddy loves you very much. It's time for sleep, and you walk back out. When you walk back out, your baby is like, I wanted my mummy. And they get really emotional and really, really upset. And you do not want your baby to get emotional and upset and cry the I want cry. If you go in and see them, and then you walk out and turn your back to them, they are going to do the I want cry. They will never stop. They'll eventually either get so exhausted that they just go asleep, which isn't what you want. You don't want them going to sleep from exhausted, or they'll get so hot that they'll vomit, and you don't want that either. The difference with Save Our Sleep is if you go into them in the night, or if settling them at the beginning of, if you're settling them at 7 o'clock, but I'm talking about night waking, so you're going into them at night. The difference is when you go in, you stay in until they are asleep. You do not go in and out. Now, so let's say you've got a 6-month-old and you've decided that you want to try and get them to sleep through the night because you are exhausted. And let's face it, some people say, oh, they're only babies for a certain amount of time, da da da. That's fine. If you're someone who can handle no sleep and you can manage, that's fine. But if you're somebody who is so exhausted that you're going to do something silly, for example, you get out of the car at the shops and you forget to put it in park, or you forget to turn it off with the handbrake on and your toddler's in the back or something and it suddenly starts running away from you. That's the type of silly mistake you make when you're sleep deprived. So it's all well and good saying, oh, they're only babies for a short amount of time, or let's keep getting them up to them at night, or, it's cruel to teach them to sleep at night. Well, it could be dangerous not to. Being sleep deprived after 6 months is like driving a car under the influence of alcohol. It's really, really dangerous. You do silly things, you make mistakes. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to teach your baby how to sleep. How are we going to do that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is look at your bedding. When I had the hub in Packenden Street, people used to come in to me and I would lend them the bedding. And they would think that they had a major sleep problem. I would chat to them. They would say that they put their baby down to bed at 7 o'clock at night and their baby, or 8 o'clock or 7:30 or 8 or 9 or whatever. And they would put their baby down to bed, and then their baby would put themselves to sleep, and then they would hear their baby wake in the night and they'd go in, get the baby up and feed them. I would say to them, if your baby is putting themselves to sleep, they may not have a sleep problem, it might be bedding. So let's look at the bedding. So I would lend them the bedding. I would lend them my mattress protector because it is not waterproof, so it is safe to use. Or I would tell them to use a cotton towel, but I would always lend them the mattress protector. But when they came back with the bedding, if they couldn't afford a mattress protector, I'd then tell them to use a cotton towel. I would change them to the Save Our Sleep sleeping bag because they're warmer and they're TOG rated after washing, so they are warmer than most other sleeping bags on the market, which are all TOG tested before washing. So once you wash something, the TOG is how warm something is. So the TOG basically says how much air is trapped in it, and air creates warmth when you sleep. And if you wash something, it's going to tighten up and less air is going to be trapped because everything shrinks in the first wash. And so then the TOG rating of the sleeping bag becomes less. So that's what happens. You buy a sleeping bag that's 3.5 TOG, and then you wash it, it becomes 1 TOG because it's been TOG tested before it's washed. Our sleeping bags are TOG tested after they're washed. So you buy a 2.5 TOG sleeping bag off me. If you used it without washing it, which it always says wash first, it would be about 6 TOG. And then when you wash it, it becomes a 2.5. So that's why my sleeping bags are so much warmer than all the other sleeping bags in the market. So I would, lend these people a sleeping bag. So we would do, at 6 months old, we would do the mattress protector, a sheet, preferably bamboo, but if not, cotton's okay. We would have the baby in a short sleeve bodysuit, if wrapped, a long sleeve bodysuit, if not wrapped. We would have the 2.5 sleeping bag, if not wrapped, the 1 TOG or the 0.5 if wrapped. We would then have a sheet folded in 2 on top of the baby, and then anything from 8 to 16 layers of the Save Our Sleep blankets, which are all cellular blankets. The heirloom cellular, the luxury cellular, and the cellular cellular. Cellular means that they're breathable, they're see-through, they've got little holes in them. If you hold them up to the window, you can see through them. That's why they're called cellular. So you would use anything from, and they have to be cotton bamboo, and the Save Our Sleep ones seem to be magic. If anyone has some and would like to tell anyone else watching that you agree or disagree that there's something about them. People buy the identical blanket from a different brand and it doesn't work. And then they buy my brand, which looks like the identical blanket, and their baby sleeps all night. That's because we get ours TOG tested. We constantly check that they're still the right TOG, etc. So you would make sure that you had all the blankets correct. And then if you had all the blankets correct, now Katie says, definitely don't rush in. As for the minute, please check the book. I haven't got it with me right now. I think she might be talking to one of the other mums. Bree says she loves the blankets. I think she might be talking to Sophie. Let me go and open up Sophie's comment. Sophie said, okay, what should I set the timer for Lyric, Tizzy? He's almost 22 weeks. I'd set it for 8 minutes. I wouldn't go in for the first 8 minutes. And if he stops and starts, this is this particular baby who I know, and I know that she has all the bedding correct. I would only go in if it's 8 minutes continuous. So I've got a 6-month-old. We now got all the bedding correct. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to resettle them at the first wake and feed them at the second wake. So when you put them to bed at 7 o'clock at night, if you're doing the dream feed, great, keep doing it. If you're not doing the dream feed, don't worry about starting it. If they're not sleeping through the night, it's not going to magically get them sleeping through the night. Then at their first wake after the dream feed, or if you're not doing the dream feed at their first wake, you can do a few things. Preferably, I would leave them for the set amount of time I've said in the book to leave a baby of their age before you go into them. However, if that's not something you can do, then you can go straight into them. You could pat them, you could rock them, you could give them a little bit of water to drink, but no more than 30 mils, because you don't want to cause water intoxication, which you can Google and find out about it. You don't want to fill them up with water. So I would give them maybe 30 mils of water if they were 5 months, up to 60 mils if they're over 6 months, okay? And, or just go in and pat them, or try and leave them. I would not do cry it out, which is just where you leave them to cry and cry and cry and cry, because you have to check that their bedding's correct first, and you have to check that their, diet, that all their food during the day is correct, all that type of stuff, before you leave them to cry at night. Cry it out is where you just leave them and you don't respond at all. One of the mums had said, Save Our Sleep blankets are amazing. I love the heirloom, super soft. I just ordered luxury, can't wait to use it. Thank you, Caitlin, for sharing that with us. So, I think that's your name. I can't read it properly. Maybe Kaylin? I might have it wrong. But anyway, so you are going to leave your baby to have a yell. You cry it out is where you don't check their bedding, you don't check their diet, you don't check what formula they're drinking, etc. You don't come into the amazing Save Our Sleep support group. You need to get the Save Our Sleep bedding. It's so much cheaper than getting a sleep consultant out to your house. You need to make sure your baby's sleeping on the back. That's the other thing. If your baby is not warm enough, doesn't feel safe and secure, they're going to flip to their tummy. You then are going to let them cry for a set amount of time, but I would like to call it yelling because they're not emotionally crying. And then you either go into them and tap their tummy to the rhythm of their heartbeat, or you might go in and you might sort of shush the cot, like you might motion the cot a little bit. You might go in and you might motion the cot a little bit. You might go in and end up picking them up and just holding them until they go back to sleep. Whatever you choose to do to get your baby back to sleep without feeding them, that's what you want to do, okay? If all else fails and you try everything to settle them for 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, it's okay to give up and feed them. The next night, they will settle faster because they have waited longer for that feed, okay? But if you can resettle them, and then at the next wake, as soon as they wake, go in and get them up and feed them, if that's what you normally do, okay? So that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and resettle at the first wake, feed at the second wake, and you're going to try this and come into the support group and let us know how you're going, but you're only going to do it if you've got the Save Our Sleep bedding and if they're sleeping on their back. I realised recently that the guy who invented this new Dr. Karp, he wraps the same way as me. Arms down, tight wrap around the chest with the arms around the chest. Fantastic. Red Nose Australia is now telling people not to use cocoon swaddles, which is the swaddles with the zip down the front. So that's fantastic. Now, has anybody got a question about this resettling at night that I've just talked about? Obviously, older babies, you do the lay down approach, which is where they stand up, you lie them down, you stand up, you lie them down. That's all in the book. Macca has said, I've been given a lot of the One Tog sleep bags I've received in New South Wales baby bag. it's okay to use those, but you have to remember that once you wash them, they're going to be about a 0.2 tog, and you'll just need to use extra blankets with them. And you need to make sure that the neck, even if they were given in the government bag, make sure that the neck is not big enough for your baby to slip into it. In fact, I'm going to share on my Instagram stories a video of me showing the sleep bag and how to make sure that the sleep bag is safe. So Jack has turned 8 weeks and I don't have AC in our room. The room is 19 degrees. Overnight it can get up to 28, overnight 19, up to 28 in the day. So yes, you could use that very thin bag during the day, and I would try and avoid a bassinet. I'd try and use a cot or a mini crib. And if it's 28 during the day, I'd probably only use 6 blanket layers. Or if you can use the Save Our Sleep 0.5 tog sleeping bag with a wrap and a wrap, you could use 8 blanket layers during the day if it's 28 degrees. Please note that our 1 tog sleeping bags are going to go out of stock soon, and they might not be back for another sort of 4 or 5 months. 1 tog are very important to have when you're, just the 2 to 8 month 1 togs. When your baby's 8 weeks, you move into a 1 tog. I think we've got 4 white left. So if you're looking for a white, if you don't know what sex your baby is and you're thinking you might get white, jump on quickly before we run out. And don't forget that we've got lots of things in the cost of living sale. So if you go to the website, go to offers, go to cost of living, our blankets are reduced, not the same as Click Frenzy, but they're still reduced. Our wraps are reduced because everyone is suffering with these interest rates and our mortgages. And our mattress protectors are not reduced because they're made in Australia. We don't say made in Australia on them because the packaging's not made in Australia. They're made in New South Wales most of the time. Sometimes they're made in China. So we, it just depends on when we order them and how busy the factory is. If we run out, they might be made in China. So we can't reduce them because we're supporting local jobs. And the same with our spoons, they're locally made. And the same with our mattresses, they're made in Australia. So we're trying to support local, so we can't reduce the price on them. Nadine says, hey Tizzy, has 12 layers always been the maximum layers in New South Wales and 16 elsewhere? No. 12 layers is the maximum for a baby of a certain age. And then it's 16 layers everywhere else, depending on the age. So you need to look at the bedding guide, which I've linked to on this feed, Nadine, and it explains. So you need to read the text in the bedding guide, and it's 16 layers for a baby over a certain age, depending on if they're in a cot or a bassinet, and it's 12 layers for a baby under a certain age, and maybe 10 if they're in a bassinet. You read the bedding guide. I can't remember offhand. Fiona says, hi Tizzy, do we resettle even if it's after 6:30? No. If your baby has slept and it's 6:30 a.m, I would get them up, keep them wrapped, hold them. Great, it's a great question, Fiona. Hold them and tap their back maybe to the rhythm of your heartbeat until 7 o'clock, but don't feed them until 7 o'clock if you can avoid it. Any advice for my bubba's 11 weeks old, riddles his way out of the blankets? I don't think you've got enough blankets. If he's riddling out of the blankets, I don't think we've got enough blankets. I've been noticing when I hear him cry, he's up towards the top of the cot. I think you don't have enough bedding. I think we need to look at your bedding. You said you just got some luxury blankets, so maybe that will help. You might need to go to the 1 tog sleeping bag. You might not be using ours. I think it could be a bedding problem. I'm pretty sure you're in the support group, so please chat to them. Or maybe you're using a foam mattress. Maybe your baby is in a bassinet or something and the mattress is not comfortable and baby's looking for a comfortable spot. If you're still on, maybe you can answer those questions for me. Sophie says, just double checking if Lyric settles in 8 minutes, would I pick him up? And if Lyric doesn't settle after 8 minutes, I would go in and try to resettle him by patting him or rocking the cot. But if none of that works, then you would feed him as a last resort. I have a 17-week-old. She's my 3rd Save Our Sleep bedding. Follow the bedding and the routines. Just fallen into a feed. Oh, it's not letting me open it up. Hold on. Just fallen into a feed to sleep routine, which is now causing issues. Any tips to stop this? She cries emotionally until I give up feed. Okay, so I would get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and feed her. And then I would not feed her. I would try something else. So maybe taking her for a walk in the pram, or maybe just wrapping her and holding her on your chest and tapping her back until she falls asleep. I would look at maybe being your 3rd baby at 17 weeks. Have you started solids? Look at maybe giving her a little bit more wake time. It might be that she's not actually tired. 3rd babies often need more wake time. So she might not have had enough awake time, which some people call sleep pressure. She might not have had enough awake time to cause the pressure for her to need to sleep. So I would look at all of that. Definitely come into our support group. There's some fantastic people in there who can help you, and sometimes I myself help you in there. Heather says, I have so many sleep bags for my first, now on my second bub. My first saw her sleep bags with legs and wanted to try it. All SOS bedding and products, all well made, don't look old. That's so fantastic to hear. And the other great thing is that you can buy the Save Our Sleep products and then sell them in a second-hand group. So it's like, you know, you might think, oh, these are really expensive, but then you can resell them for pretty similar to what you've bought them for, and you've got use out of them, which is great. Anyway, I am going to leave it there, guys. Don't forget to check out on our website, because I need to go and put Kieran to bed. We're 6 minutes late for his bedtime. He is 9 and he's going to bed at 8:30 tonight. He's normally in bed and actually going to sleep at 8:30, but he is not. He's going to bed later tonight because I'm doing this. And some nights he goes to bed at 7:30 still, but tonight was a swimming night, so he's going to bed later because he's home from school later. So I'm going to call it a day, but remember to go to the website, go to the offers page on the website. First time users, a little code might come up for you. Second time, third, fourth, fifth time users, remember we've got our sale, and remember to check out our offers. Lee says she's part of the Facebook group and we'll post in there. Great, please do, Lee. And remember, I'm saying babies over 6 months really need to be sleeping through the night. There's no reason for them really to be waking up. So I was giving you tips, but the first thing we would always look at is the bedding. Babies who don't have enough bedding roll to their tummy. Rolling to their tummy is unsafe. If you can have your child extended back sleeping till about 2 years old or further, that is a really good thing. Okay, everybody, have a great night. I hope to check in with you all again on Friday. Take care, and please tag any of your pregnant friends or new mums or people you know having sleep problems on this live feed. Thanks very much.